Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back on into the Space Cowboy Show. I'm your host, Ricardo, and we have to start getting the ball rolling when it comes to talking about the upcoming free agency class for the Cowboys this offseason. Now look, there are a ton of names. We're going to split this into two parts. Today's video is going to highlight the offensive side of the ball and the free agents that are set to hit the open market. We'll talk about the defensive side of the ball at a later date once we have the DC in place for this team. As of this recording, we still don't know who the defensive coordinator is. They're in the middle of interviewing a ton of candidates, which is great, like I talked about on the previous show. If you didn't go see that, go check it out. But before we dive into this list of free agents, two things. Number one, we're only talking about unrestricted free agents. The only restricted free agent that I saw for the Cowboys on the offensive side of the ball was TJ Bass. I think the Cowboys are going to tender him, but there's a bunch of other names we're going to get to in today's video. Next, if you haven't done so already, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future content, and support the channel. By the way, show is powered by Creshman Media. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to go check out the other shows on the Creshman Media Network. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this list the Cowboys have for their unrestricted free agents on the offensive side of the ball who will become free agents if the Cowboys don't elect to resign them beforehand or franchise tag them. Now, as you take a look at this list initially, you only have 7 names on the offensive side of the ball that you have to look at re-signing or letting go. And there's only 2 notable names, obviously you guys could probably see, but to skip over the names that I don't think the Cowboys need to bother bringing back or prioritize, Hakeem Adeniji, Miles Sanders, Robert Jones, guys that you brought in on one-year deals for 2025, didn't bring any impact whatsoever. They were either injured or they just did absolutely nothing or just minimal things at that. So I have no interest in expanding upon talking about these backups. If the Cowboys elect to bring them back, is what it is. But again, I'm not focused on those guys. So we're going to go ahead and start this thing off with the biggest name of the bunch when it comes to these free agents on the offensive side of the ball, George Pickens, your wide receiver too, the guy that you brought in by giving up a 3rd round pick in 2026 and a 5th round pick in 2027, and in return you got George Pickens and a 6th round pick in 2027. This was a home run trade for the Dallas Cowboys. The fact of the matter is that you understood that when you were acquiring a player like George Pickens, especially on the last year of his deal, you were going to look to most likely re-sign him, which I do believe the Cowboys are going to at some point. The question is he worth re-signing? Does it make sense? Is it feasible? And most importantly, how important is it for the Cowboys to get this done? Starting off with the latter thing, it is extremely important. There is a reason George Pickens became a Dallas Cowboy, and that was to provide another weapon not only for Dak Prescott, but also a guy that can take pressure off of CeeDee Lamb. The biggest thing that the Cowboys have been looking for ever since CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper were separated were a viable 1-2 punch for that wide receiver core and for your quarterback to operate in. And you finally got that. Yes, you had a couple names that circulated through, like a guy like Brandon Cooks. You had Michael Gallup, things like that. But you didn't really have that certified stud as a wide receiver too. And based off of what we saw, this guy literally started conversations as to possibly being the number 1 wide receiver on the Dallas Cowboys with his attitude, swagger, and his level of play. Looking at what he did in 2025, career year, 9 touchdown catches, 1,400 yards, 93 catches. And those stats are even including games where he had a couple stinkers here and there, but that is just mind-blowing to say the least. A Pro Bowler, 2nd team All-Pro. There is no reason the Dallas Cowboys should not look to re-sign this man. Now, the biggest question of all, can the Cowboys afford to re-sign George Pickens? Absolutely. They have enough contracts to where you can restructure them to push money down the road, especially considering the fact that you can also release a couple guys. Like when you release Trevon Diggs, that was going to open up some money, which will most likely go to a guy like George Pickens, number 1. But number 2, apparently they're trying to look to lower the cap hits for both Kenny Clark and Terrence Steele. So that's something to keep an eye out on as we move forward. One of the things that bothered me throughout the year when it came to George Pickens, especially towards the tail end of the 2025 season, was there were these narratives that started to be generating, and we did talk about that a little bit towards the tail end of the year, where, oh, he was running lazy routes, oh, you shouldn't pay a guy like him because this is the reason why he got traded from Pittsburgh, despite the fact that that was only 1 or 2 games, and last time I checked, you don't take 1 or 2 games and judge a whole player's season based off of that type of resume. When you gave him the ball, he did exactly what he was supposed to do and then some, which is what we wanted to see. And the fact is that it would be malpractice for the Dallas Cowboys to let George Pickens walk. And I'm saying it would be malpractice because if the Cowboys let George Pickens leave this team, you're right back to square one offensively with this receiving core once again. You have a 1-2 punch that is so damn dynamic and young. Even you could look at possibly the next quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys to have these two as their receiver. And for me, I think that the other part of it too is if you are trying to contend in 2026 and 2027, it would make no sense to let this guy walk as well. You don't want to go into this draft or even free agency having another need at wide receiver, considering how bad the defense is personnel-wise in terms of certain positions. And offensively, we've talked about maybe you have to go get another tackle. Maybe you need to address tight end at some particular point for the backup positions, which you don't have enough draft capital to fix all of the holes on this team. And so if you're not going to spend a whole lot in free agency, you might as well bring George Pickens back if you're going to put some money somewhere. And so again, I don't think I need to harp on it anymore as to why the Dallas Cowboys need to bring back George Pickens. In terms of a price tag, you're probably looking $30 million a year, but don't let the average value change your opinion on how much you want to see George Pickens back with the Cowboys, or, oh, I don't want him back for this particular price point. Just because we say that it's going to be this amount of money per year doesn't mean that's how it's going to actually reflect on the books. There's going to be guaranteed money involved. There's going to be a year amount. All that type of stuff will help with the cap hit. And I would imagine if the Cowboys do re-sign him, they will backload the contract and just call it a day there. Again, I think George Pickens is the number one priority for the Dallas Cowboys this offseason when it comes to all of the free agents they have, not just on the offensive side of the ball, all of them. And without a shadow of a doubt, he needs to be back in a Cowboys uniform. Now, the other notable name that we need to look at bringing back is Javonte Williams, but it's not as set in stone as to the opinion of you need to bring this guy back. Looking at what Javonte Williams did in 2025, he had a career year. He had 1,201 yards, 11 rushing touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns, and he had a boatload of carries, 252 to be exact. And we did see towards the tail end of the year, he started to get beat up a bit. But the fact that you were able to pay $3.5 million, granted it was just for the year, but to get 11 rushing touchdowns, 4.8 yards per carry, 1,200 rushing yards is extremely impressive. This is an element that the Cowboys have been missing for a while, having a running back that can bruise a defense, and especially considering that you're trying to beef up and play physical offensive football with you getting these offensive linemen, these huge guys, especially on the interior, and you needed a running back that was going to complement that style of football, and Javonte Williams fit that to a T. But does the injury history start to weigh into what you should do? Yeah, absolutely. I think that when it comes to hurt guys, sometimes and most likely they will stay hurt. I just look at what the Cowboys have in that running back room, and I don't think I'm comfortable with moving off of a guy like Javonte Williams unless we knew for certain what else you had in the room. Now, where this running back room is, obviously with Javonte Williams, we know what you got there. But with Jadon Blue, you saw a little bit of what he can do in that Giants game for the finale. You had Phil Maffa take a couple snaps here and there. And you did have Malik Davis have some bright moments this season. But this running back room, when you look at it in a vacuum, it's not great. There's a lot of question marks there, especially with Blue and Maffa, because I remember when we talked about this to start off the season, the idea was Javonte Williams would take over for the year as a transitional running back. You would have Blue and Maffa try to emerge, and you would have a lightning and thunder combination with them. But unfortunately, that's not what we got to see. Maffa was injured. Blue just wasn't consistent and didn't get a whole lot of carries because of things that were going on not only on the field but off the field with how he just didn't seem engaged per the coaching staff. But for me, I think with Javonte Williams, I'm willing to give this guy a 2 to 3 year contract, and you're probably looking between $7 to $8 million a year. Again, that doesn't mean that's going to be the cap hit, but you right now don't have a viable alternative because, yeah, you can go into the draft, but you have to remember you don't have any day two picks. And I know that the whole mantra is you don't need to draft a running back in the first round. You can go get a guy elsewhere. But at the same time, that isn't a guarantee. You drafted a guy in Jadon Blue. He wasn't a hit in his first year, and I don't know what he's going to look like moving forward. But if you have a guy in Javonte Williams, that means that there's less pressure on guys like Blue and Maffa to step up and really be a productive force for this team. So if I were to say what the Cowboys should do with Javonte Williams, I would say re-sign him if the price is right. He's still on the younger side of things. I believe he's going to be 26 years old come the start of next season. But you have to really consider the fact that if you're going to re-sign him, I do think you're going to need to ensure that the running back room behind Javonte Williams is better and can take less pressure off of him to be that primary back in not having to take like 300 carries to be productive. That is where I think the Cowboys need to go with a guy like Javonte Williams. Re-sign him if the price is right. Jalen Tolbert. This was a guy that we wanted to see, could he emerge as a proper wide receiver 3, or is he just going to be a guy that we can just toss off to the wayside because someone will take his place? And I've mentioned it many times. I was not a fan of Jalen Tolbert, and I think that this season proved it. He was not good this season. He had a couple catches here and there. Again, I'm not going to take away those accomplishments and some of those crucial catches that he had, especially in that Green Bay game, if you remember that. But again, you had a guy in Ryan Flanoy come in and did amazing for you as a wide receiver 3, which is exactly what you needed. And on top of that, you got a guy in Jonathan Mingo who's under another year of team control in 2026. And I don't see a reason to re-sign Tolbert whatsoever. Look, I want every player to succeed, but that is just not what happens at the NFL level. The problem was that when Tolbert came into the league, he had lofty expectations to replace Amari Cooper, considering how that fiasco went back then, and he just never took that step to become a better player. Yeah, in 2024 he had a nice season, but he didn't build upon that. And that is what we wanted to see this entire time. Instead, he just got thrown to the wayside, and deservedly so. He just wasn't doing well. And now you move on from him and you save some money there. But the thing for me is this wide receiving core good enough with what they have now? If you bring back George Pickens, you're going to have Lamb, Pickens, Flanoy, Mingo, and Turpin. I think that you can maybe throw another name in there, and most likely as like a wide receiver 5 maybe. But again, I think that the Cowboys are already set at their wide receiver core. And then the last guy we need to talk about is Brock Hoffman, and this should be pretty quick. Backup center. I do like him as a backup center, but not as a long-term starter, and I talked about that in a previous video. Can you do better than Brock Hoffman? Sure. But I think that you can maybe bring him back for the right price, and that is exactly what the Cowboys should look to do. Now, if the Cowboys elect to let Brock Hoffman go, that's fine. I'm not looking to bring this guy back if the price just is too much, because you can take a guy like TJ Bass, who has that center and guard experience similar to what Hoffman was able to do, and you can roll with that for another season and then look to possibly get a better replacement down the road. So the way I look at it is that Brock Hoffman, solid backup for you, but I'm not pressuring into bringing him back if it just doesn't make sense money-wise. So looking back at the list, you have George Pickens as the must re-sign player. Then you have Javonte Williams as the guy you should re-sign if the price is right. Then you have a guy in Brock Hoffman, which is re-sign if the price is right, but I'm not pressured to do that. And the rest of these guys, I'm more or less okay with walking. So Cowboys really don't have to do a whole lot this upcoming offseason with the offensive side of the ball with guys set to leave the room. I do want to hear from you guys, though. Who do you think the Cowboys need to prioritize? Am I being a bit too harsh on some of these players that are set to leave the room? By all means, let me know down below in the comments section, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Have a good one, guys. Goodbye.